Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by hairy, huggable, handsome homos who love film to discuss movies and dish a little bit of film news. This week, I am joined by my fantastical, most wonderful partner, Jim Pugliafico. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, thank you, babe, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Glad to have you, sweetheart. Unfortunately, Will Lindus is out this week. He is at Fantastic Fest having a wonderful time. I'm sure he's on movie number 195 already. We'll hear all about it. Whoa! Film news. Okay. We're going to start over because that was weird. It popped up a new window and just started playing. So, okay. We're going to take it back to the beginning, I guess. That's probably
back to the beginning.
Easiest. Yeah, back in time. 3, 2, 1. Hello, all. I'm Brad Harrison. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. Each week, I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss movie news, maybe review some films, and do what we do best, just gab about movies. As usual, this week, I'm joined by my wonderful, fantastic partner, Jim Pugliafico. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Glad to have you, sweetheart. Unfortunately, Will Lindus is out this week. He is at Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas. I'm sure he's like on movie 199 at this point. We'll hear all about it when he gets back. But we have the super, super awesome Steve from the Sacramento Movie Bears with us this week, filling in for Will. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, greetings from Sacramento. It is such an honor. Miss Will, but glad to fill in. In his honor, I'm practicing my furrowed brow of intellectual contemplation, as well as the patented Will Lindus half smile.
Yeah, half smile. Nice. I'm glad we have a listener, come on board who pays attention to what's going on the show. But do you have your boutique microbrew beer with you?
Nor do I have the infamous Will Gnome stand-in from my last time here.
Oh.
But I will instead be drinking my old man Maker's Manhattan, but in my Cal Bears Rooter glass. So
nice.
I'm paired with an old man drink in a Cal Bears glass.
There you go. I was going to ask if you were drinking scotch in honor of the Scorch Trials. I mean, the Scorch Trials.
That would require too much thought or interest in the movie, but we'll get to that later.
You wouldn't make it a day in the scotch.
Why didn't we do that? That's what I'm asking.
Right?
Why didn't we just make scotch drinks and get something out of this movie?
Exactly.
Oh goodness. Well, we will be reviewing Maze Runner Scorch Trials later on in the show. Yeah, I don't know how that conversation is going to go, but it's going to be fun. I'm sure. But first we want to serve up a little bit of movie news. What do you guys think? Are you ready to get into it? Are we ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. You guys sound so enthused. Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing.
Yay, movie news.
All right, here we go. Movie news. I hear the sound effect in my head, and then when it's done, I start. So,
nice.
Jim, you should have like a perfect, like right on the money gap, like right there to go ahead and insert that sound.
Pretty much. It's I mean, we've done that the last couple shows, and we're pretty good at guessing the time.
We are definitely. It's all that Back to the Future we've been watching, Jim.
That must be what it is.
October 23rd. October 23rd.
Yep.
October 23rd, is that it?
That is, I believe, the date that he went back to the future. October 23rd.
Oh, what's going to happen?
That's when they're showing Back to the Future 2 at the local art house.
Yeah.
That's right. They're doing that here, too.
Yeah. Except ours is doing 1 and 2. They're doing both. But thank God they're not showing 3.
It'd be a long night. And yeah.
Indeed.
You didn't even make me watch that one.
Right. I know better. But you're probably going to want to watch it anyway because you're a completist.
I am.
We'll have to see. But Jim, what has got your excitement this week?
Oh, I get to go first, do I?
You do.
All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit of Fast and Furious franchise. Steve, I forget. Are you a fan of the Fast and Furious movies at all?
I am. I've seen them all. Had fun at most of them. I find the phenomenon just fascinating on a couple different levels. But Jim, will there be more?
Well, yes, of course there'll be more. And it's interesting that you say Fast and Furious is fascinating because Brad really gets off on that alliteration.
I do.
So he's probably a little chubby right now under the desk. I'm just saying when you said that. But yeah, I guess there was some news from Vin Diesel. And there's been some swirl on rumors around the franchise. Of course, we just got Furious 8. Was that the one? Or was that what it was called? Or Fast 7? No.
Fast 7.
Fast 7 this past May. Furious 7, whatever, Fast 7. I don't know. The titling conventions on these movies baffle me. But the wheels are turning on a Furious 8 amid rumors of a studio, finding and announcing a director. There's been talk of a couple different directors. There's been talk about Vin Diesel actually taking too much kind of creative control of the franchise. He is a producer of the franchise at this point, and that he's kind of difficult to work with. Then there's also rumors about maybe Lucas Black coming back and stepping up as kind of a pseudo, not stepping into Paul Walker's character, obviously, because they took care of that in the last movie without any big spoilers, but kind of like a pseudo replacement to kind of fill the gap left by Paul Walker, and we know that Lucas Black definitely has some motivation to come back if you follow the franchise based on what happened in Tokyo Drift, but yet was revisited again in this last movie, Furious 7. So Diesel, I guess, went to Facebook and put something out that said that they're starting up the production of the next sequel in the franchise, and he's confirmed that the studio is planning Furious 9 and Furious 10 for one, and this is going to be like what he calls the final trilogy of the Fast and Furious series. So, and here's what he said on Facebook. Quote, "The fans of the Fast and Furious saga are the best fans in the world. Since I became the producer in 2008, you have been with me every step of the way, literally giving me feedback that proved invaluable. Thank you. My producing partner, Neil, would love for me to just sign off on a director, but this is too special a franchise, so these matters have to be very carefully handled. To be clear, no one has been offered to helm Fast 8 yet, let alone seen a script. Universal has been so good to me and so trusting of the vision. They have been like family. I promised the studio I would deliver one last trilogy to end the saga. I will announce the directors on my next post." So that's kind of big news. I mean, it kind of bounds things and says, hey, we're doing one final trilogy. I'm not sure I believe that, especially if these things continue to rake in, $1 billion a pop. Basically, I don't know how the studio is going to lay that down. I just don't see that happening. But it would be good if a franchise could figure out a way to kind of go out on top and not drag this thing out until it gets so watered down that we all kind of roll our eyes every time another sequel is mentioned. So anyway, go ahead, Steve.
It's interesting that you say that because this is a franchise that almost died out once and then sort of made a roaring comeback.
Right.
And as far as the movies themselves, I think they're entertaining popcorn. I usually end up kind of laughing my ass off at the overly stilted macho dialogue throughout.
Right.
That's just crazy. But this was a movie that discovered an audience that Hollywood did not know existed. And I think that they did, the first movie was almost a throwaway movie that they did not know what they had. And then they realized that there's this diverse group of moviegoers who could really look up to these characters. And for instance, when I go see a movie and look at the audience, it's extremely diverse, particularly culturally, ethnically, but yet very much the same, as it tends to be male and in a certain age group. And this is apparently an audience starving to see themselves on the big screen, or people they related to, or people they thought they could cheer for. Because definitely by the time you got to the last movie, the characters were well known enough that people cheer the minute they appear on screen or are referenced on screen. So it definitely serves an audience that people had previously maybe not known was there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think a lot of people that kind of outside that aren't fans of the franchise think that, hey, it's just gearheads that go to these movies, but it's not. Like you said, it's a very diverse audience. Even, I mean, you mentioned it's mostly male, and definitely that's the case. That's the case for a lot of action type, action, adventure, blah, 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 whatever movies. But I'm pretty sure this movie has its share of female fans as well. So, I think that's one thing that I really love about this franchise, and that it's kind of created this world that we're all kind of anxious to see what happens next in this world and what they're going to do. And it's it's as long as they keep it entertaining and don't try to bite off too much, like Fast and Furious in space or something, then I think we're gonna all be there for this one last ride, of this trilogy 8, 9, and 10. So I'm excited.
I don't got
a
a shuttle Endeavor crew. I got family.
Nice.
I'm looking for Fast and Furious Scorch Trials.
Oh boy,
that would be fun.
That's the shark has been jumped.
Oh goodness, I don't think we're ever going to see these Fast and Furious movies end. Steve, you were saying that the franchise pretty much almost died out at one point, and I remember thinking, oh goodness, yes, please. Because I had seen the first movie, I thought it was terrible. I hadn't gone any further than that. And I'm like, why do they keep making these movies? But you know what? Honestly, as we've gone back and Jim has forced me to watch them, there's redeeming value in them. In fact, they've gotten better the further we've gotten along into the series. And, to the fact that like 5, 6, and 7 I actually pretty much enjoyed. You know what I mean? So, gosh, I don't know how long they're going to be able to string this along. But, Jim, I think you're right. If they're making $1 billion+ every time they put one out, what reason is there to stop?
Believe me, there's studio heads that will not let them stop. So, I mean, the thing is, once they finish these 3, they may lay it down for a while. But, I mean, this year we've got Creed coming out, which seems like almost a reboot of the Rocky franchise a little bit, with great new talents and you sneak a little Sylvester Stallone in there, and it feels to me like it's. I know they're not really marketing it as a Rocky reboot, but who knows? Something like that could happen to this series down the road. They lay it down after 10, and then, 10 years later, 15, 20 years later, they start it up, and you have old man Vin Diesel out there,
Hey, Jim, remember, how old was Paul Walker's son in the film at the end of the movie?
Oh God!
It was like 3 or 4 or younger.
Yeah, something like that.
So let's say he's 4. That means in 12 years he gets his driver's license. There you go.
Yeah, 15 years is perfect. That's what.
And Vin Diesel is going to be his driver's ed teacher.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, he's a retired driver. I don't race cars anymore.
Don't make me use my second brake.
Check your blind spot.
Turn signal when merging. Anyway, interesting. Well, I've got some news from Ridley Scott regarding Prometheus 2.
Oh.
I know you were super pumped for Prometheus when it came out. Gosh, how long ago was that? 3 years? 4 years? 4 years?
It's been 3 or 4 years, I think.
It was 4 years, right? Because it was on a milestone birthday for you, as I remember. We went right from like celebratory pool party with the gayest rainbow cake ever to seeing Prometheus.
That's me. Gay rainbow cakes. Gotta have them.
Anyway, Ridley Scott has come out recently and said that it will not be known as Prometheus 2. It's going to be called Alien Paradise Lost. And, right. So, the first movie got a lot of flack because it's like, is it an Alien tie-in? Is it not an Alien tie-in? Like, what the hell is this, Ridley Scott? So now I guess we know. I guess he's overtly going for the connection to the Alien franchise. What exactly the plot is, I obviously don't really know at this point. I'm assuming it picks up some of the plot threads that we ended with from the previous film. I'm hoping they've learned to run sideways instead of lengthwise when a big ship is crashing down on you. But
that sounds so easy, Brad. It sounds so easy. You try it sometime.
Right. I know.
Step out of the way.
I know. But Steve, I got to ask, what did you think of the original Prometheus, and are you potentially excited for a sequel?
Well, I'm a sci-fi fan and a fantasy fan, not a horror fan, and Aliens tends to sort of straddle that divide. So it took me a while to even see the first Alien movie. Then Aliens, I did like a lot, but it was also more of an action movie than a horror movie. Prometheus, I watched. I was okay with it. I don't know that I had really a dog in that fight. I didn't have the problems with it some had, but I wasn't expecting a whole lot. And definitely seemed to end up with, definitely leaving room for the next movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the. I'm a sci-fi fan. I like horror. I wouldn't say that I'm a horror fan, but I do like horror movies that are well done, especially when they're integrated into other genres of movie. Like take Pan's Labyrinth, right? It's a fantasy movie and a drama, but it has that element of horror in it, which kind of made it really, really special. Alien was. That was probably more. The first Alien was probably more of a straight-up horror movie, just set in space. Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't care when they went to the action Aliens and the other sequels. So I didn't mind Prometheus. I thought it was pretty good. Kind of recent. It was a little bit of a slog, but and I wasn't looking for nonstop alien monsters attacks. I was just looking for a little bit more tension and stuff like that. But yeah, I was disappointed to see how it was received because I thought it was okay. And I'll probably rewatch it again before any of the new stuff comes out. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do when they pick it up.
Indeed. Well, he gave a quote and said, "We're heading back to where and how and why the beast was invented. We'll go back into the back door of the very first Alien that I did 30 years ago." So obviously we're going for the super tie-in here. Jim, are you looking forward to that potentially, like more connectiveness?
Definitely. I think we all thought we'd get a little bit of that in the Prometheus movie that we really didn't get. And that was probably the main disappointment for a lot of people, including me. If there was a disappointment for me, that was it. It was just didn't seem like enough of a direct tie-in to the Alien movie. But yeah, I mean, those words from him kind of make me excited. If he's going to finally explore, how that thing or that is created. Does it come from a world? Why was it created? All that stuff. That could be quite interesting.
Those are always my kind of questions, and wondering, because in the first movie, I assumed they flew the ship that got them there. Then you start to think of how could something this primitive get out into space, and if not them, then who and why? So yeah, if only to bookend that might be interesting to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I was not really looking forward to Prometheus 2. I enjoyed the first film. I mean, it was fine, but for me, it was just so lacking in that connective tissue that I was looking forward to. Expectation management, shut that you know, I just was kind of over it a little bit. But now, as I'm hearing more about it, I'm starting to get excited again. So we'll see. Steve, do you think this is a cop out though, calling it Alien like directly in the title? Do you think he caved?
Well, I definitely think that. I think he definitely lost some possible marketing when he tried to separate the last one from Alien, kind of saying, "Oh, it's not really an Alien movie, but maybe sort of, kind of." And
we'll throw one in. We'll throw one in at the end, just to.
and if maybe he just realizes that he needs to bring back the Alien audience by just flat out saying, "Sure, it's an Alien movie. Come see it."
There you go. All right. Well, we shall see. It comes out 17.
Yeah,
18.
I don't know if the title itself. You know, putting Alien in the title is fine, but the Paradise Lost thing, I don't know that's doing anything for me.
Well, it's a reference from John Milton's
Paradise Lost.
Yeah. Right. I know. I'm like, way to go, Ridley Scott. You're trying to.
Freshman book report. Get it out.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, Steve, what have you got?
Movie news. There's a new Star Wars movie coming out.
No way.
What?
Tell us about it. I haven't heard a thing about it.
I tried to do some research before I got online here and ran out of time. I was so busy trying to. I couldn't figure out I had to log on to Chatterbait to see if my camera was working.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
And I was surprised to find out there was very little debate going on in that chat room. I thought there would be.
Chat debate?
The debate.
I don't think it's chat debate. Yeah. You got the title a little wrong there.
Oh, now
you were in the wrong room.
Now I get it. Everyone looks so comfortable. I couldn't find anything interesting that I thought everyone didn't already know. I'll tell you what. I'll share one of my plugs for later. I'll just put it here now. There is soon to be released. It might be even on streaming now. I was trying to check around. Something I have not seen, but just kind of piqued my interest. A documentary called. Where are my nerd glasses here? I don't know if you've talked about it, but a documentary called "The Death of Superman Lives." What happened? And this is a documentary about the never-made movie, Superman Lives, starring Nicolas Cage, directed by Tim Burton, and written by Kevin Smith, which was slated to come out sometime around 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently just before principal filming started, it got sandbagged by Warner Brothers. And so this is a documentary about how that movie became the next big thing and then burned and crashed. So to me, that's one of those what if. That would have been an interesting movie. You know, Nick Cage 20 years ago, Kevin Smith involved, Tim Burton's version of a Superman comic. So that's due out, if not now, soon, streaming, if not at your local theater. And so I want to sort of put that out there. The Death of Superman Lives.
I'm definitely interested in seeing that. Do you know if we get to see Cage like in a super suit at all? In any of the archival
I've heard
or anything?
There might be a couple shots of him in this really weird rubbery suit, kind of, first mock-up kind of thing, but we'll see.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to check this out. I mean, it was a film that, back then I had just started getting on the internet. I think I was still using AOL to like dial up to the internet and
M4M chat room.
No, I was a little young back in '98 for that stuff. But I just remember like I would go to like the AOL homepage or whatever when it would log you in, and I just remember seeing this like article. It was like a picture of Nick Cage and a picture of Kevin Smith, and it just said Superman Lives, and I got so excited, and then my little nerd heart broke when I heard that it wasn't happening. In retrospect, it's probably a good thing. I don't know. I heard that it was
a train wreck in waiting.
A bit of a train wreck in waiting. As much as I love Kevin Smith and Nick Cage and Tim Burton, it's kind of an odd like triangular combination of things. I don't know what we would have gotten, but I really want to see the documentary. I had no idea that it was coming out so soon. So
apparently so.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
This sounds like kind of along the same lines as Jodorowsky's Dune. You know, a documentary about a film that may have been a great idea, may have had a lot of good creative energy behind it, but for whatever reason, whether it's funding or studio cold feet or whatever, it just didn't get made. So it's funny. I'm definitely more interested in seeing this documentary than the new Batman versus Superman movie.
Wow.
Well, as the new movie goes, I get more and more sold as they bring out more trailers, because just hearing about it and some of the early stuff was like, oh, come on. They've crafted their campaign well enough to at least pique my interest. I mean, I'm going to buy a ticket regardless, but I have a little more faith in it now than I did 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you, Steve. Absolutely. The more I've seen, the more excited I get. I just hope that it's not a train wreck of mishmash, way too dark and gritty and too many characters, and I don't know. We'll see. But I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we're like half an hour into the show, and we still have a movie to review, believe it or not.
Wow. 30 minutes has gone by fast.
Right? It totally has. But are we ready to shift gears and talk about some young adult fiction franchise offerings?
Let's do it.
You'll never last a minute out in the scorch.
All right, here we go. Our discussion of Maze Runner Scorch Trials. One of these days, we should totally reenact one of the trailers. Just do a little verbal, just us doing the voices.
Totally.
That would be awesome.
I would love to do something like that.
Overlay it over the actual
than
video.
we do, huh?
Right.
I'll have to work on my young adult pouty face.
Well, we'll just take a trailer and we'll write out a script and hand out the parts and just do it.
That would be perfect. Jim, I think you have homework for The Martian next week.
The Martian, maybe we should do The Martian.
Speaking of parodies, if you're at all a fan of Steve Colbert, you should see the Hunger Games parody he's doing every time a Republican candidate leaves the race.
Oh, really?
Freaking genius. Another one's gone. He was a hero. It's hilarious.
Oh, goodness. Nice. Well, just to give you guys a bit of a heads up how this works in case you're new to our show.
How does it work?
Right. I said new to the show, so that's assuming you've not listened before. And I want to give a quick shout-out to you if that's the case, because
Welcome.
We appreciate you guys coming to check us out. We know that we've recently... I was on War Machine versus Warhorse recently and heard from several of you guys who have come over to the show as a result of being fans of War Machine, so we're glad to have you guys on board. And so basically what we do is we talk about the film spoiler-free, kind of give you a little bit of a rundown about what it's about, in terms of the trailer at least, and some spoiler-free advice on whether we think it's worth your time or money. And then we'll give you plenty of warning before we go into Spoiler Town. So if you've not seen it yet, you have a chance to bail and come back for plugs later on. But, gosh, Maze Runner, Scorch Trial. So the first film came out a year ago, which, Steve, you also joined us to review.
You're punishing me. We'll see what I said.
So from now until eternity, Steve, you're going to be joining us for Maze Runner movies. I hope you're cool with that.
Eternity might be the end of this movie, actually. The way this franchise is going.
In any event. So basic setup. The kids who, spoiler warning for Maze Runner 1, got out of the maze basically end up being whisked away to this military compound because guess what? There's a whole post-apocalyptic world going on outside the maze. So they're picked up by the army and whisked away to this compound, and basically there's more going on than meets the eye. And Aidan Gillen, who plays Littlefinger on the Game of Thrones series, obviously, according to the trailer, he's up to no good, and everyone decides to bail on the military compound and go out into the Scorch, which is what they call the blighted, like, Marsy desert of apocalyptic Earth, whatever the hell it is. And so, basically this group of not very interesting teenagers takes out into the Scorch, and they're, having to sort of be on the run from the government / military / whatever, and there's this other group of people that they're going towards, and oh my god, there's also this whole plague thing, and the specialist of the special kids may hold the key to saving life as we know it, and blah, 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 blah. This was not a great movie for me, I'll be honest. Even though I loved seeing Giancarlo Esposito as George, I didn't even know he was going to be in the movie.
Jorge.
Gus Frayne. Was it Jorge?
It was Jorge, I think.
I was sleeping a little bit. I thought the daughter chick called him George or whatever.
I don't know. I thought it was Jorge.
No, maybe it is. You're probably right. I did fall asleep a couple times. I won't lie. I'll be honest. But in any event, did enjoy seeing him. Patricia Clarkson, who I adore. I loved seeing her again in this movie. She got a little bit of meat to play with, which was nice. But I mean, otherwise, it just, for me was super, super passable. This is pretty much like one of those films I would recommend you just wait for it to come out on Blu-ray or whatnot. I don't think you necessarily need to go out and spend $14 to go see this movie in the theater. There's some cool, visual and sound stuff going on, but I don't know. For me, it's pretty much by and large a rental. But what about you, Steve? What did you think?
Well, I tried to be. I wanted to be open-minded about this film because I was already predisposed about my feelings about the first one, which was, second shelf, young adult fiction cast-off sort of material, and it was kind of the same. I will say that I think it was fairly well made. I think it has some pretty good set action pieces. I thought the art direction, cinematography sets were kind of cool in places. There are some movies, especially like some real small kid movies, that the best review I can give is, hey, if you got to take your 5-year-old niece or nephew to go see a movie, this won't kill you. This one is probably aimed at the 12, 13, 14-year-old set. And if you got a teenage niece who wants to see young folks on oh god, that sounds old. Young folks.
Benetton models.
20-year-olds playing 18-year-olds in a movie meant for 14-year-olds to watch. You could do worse. It was never boring. There's lots going on. It started off as one kind of young adult movie, and then in the middle, second act seemed like a different genre of movie, and then in the third act became yet another genre movie, and then left you with that, wait for movie 3, which you expect.
Right.
So it is exactly what you think it is, and it won't. It's entertaining enough. You don't need to run out and see it, and I would agree with you, Brad. If it comes on cable, you could click on it and not be terribly disappointed. But it's definitely a not quite a meh, but just a meh plus.
Meh plus. I like that one.
High praise. High praise.
How about you, Jim?
Yeah, for me, I actually stayed awake for the whole movie, and I still didn't like it. It's just so the first movie it was okay for me. It was kind of an interesting setup for the world. I thought we talked about the last movie and the way it ended and how disappointing the ending of the last movie was and how disjointed and like kind of out of nowhere that ending was. And so I was still hopeful though going into this movie that they would be able to this is based I guess on a book or a series of books which I have not read. So I don't know the story, and sad to say that 4 hours into this franchise, I believe I still don't know most of the story. I know that
very much.
And I don't know if that's intentional, but God, we have no idea of the basic premise of this movie, other than it's a post-apocalyptic type world. There are factions. We've seen this in several other movies, right? The Insurgent series and Hunger Games and all that stuff. But unlike those movies, I don't get a sense of what everybody's what the big motivations are, what put them in this situation. And sometimes that's okay if the drama within that world is interesting, but it's not. I mean, we'll get into some of the threats, the discrete threats that popped up in this movie versus the last movie, because I don't want to spoil this one. But that was very disappointing for me too. We'll get it. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, you sort of tapped into my major frustration. This movie explains nothing. If you were lost in the first movie, you'll still be lost in this movie. Motivations don't make sense. Actions don't make sense. You don't know who's on what side. And to a certain degree, I'm always a fan of show me, don't tell me.
Right.
As they say, but it doesn't even do that.
No.
Motivations are nonsensical completely, and maybe if I'd read the book, I mean, I wonder if I had watched the Harry Potter films, having not already read all the books, if I might have been lost, and maybe that's true. But in a good trilogy, you could come into, say, Empire Strikes Back without necessarily having watched Star Wars and still kind of get the gist.
Mm-hmm. Right. But at least in Star Wars, it basically sets up the primary conflict. In this movie, I still am not sure what the conflict really is. Even though they showed me some things, some cool stuff in the lab and blah blah blah. It's just very frustrating the way this movie has kind of concealed its premise. Maybe the movie doesn't even have any faith in its own premise that I would find that anybody would find that interesting. The movie is called Maze Runner. It's a lot of running in this movie. I'll give it that much. We've kind of left the maze behind. That's a mild,
surprisingly little maze.
That's a mild spoiler. They do mention it a couple times, but I almost think the movie would have been better if all three movies took place within the maze and it was just them getting out of the maze. At least I would understand what the what the premise is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else about this movie? Oh, the characters I think are typically bland characters. I don't think I really care for any of them. It's funny because I like most of the supporting characters that popped up in this movie, right? Yeah. You mentioned the guy from Breaking Bad. It shows up as Jorge. I like him. Lily Taylor pops up in this one, which surprised the hell out of me. I'm like, this is pretty awesome. Where was she the whole movie? But the main characters, I just don't care for any of those kids, and it's obvious that they got a pretty diverse crowd of kids, young, fresh faces.
That's sorta. I'm gonna call it sorta on that.
Sorta, you think? Sorta, you think?
And I tell you why. And again, actually, a good comparison is this and the Fast and Furious movies. In the Fast and Furious movies, I think if the studios had actually thought that was going to be a big movie making a lot of money, we probably would have seen a much more standard, maybe bigger named cast of people. Mm-hmm. This movie, which I think they assume has a built-in audience, the casting was straight out of Disney Central casting. This could have been all kids taken from a Disney Channel show.
At least we got a Game of Thrones.
People have never seen Erasure before. They're awfully clean cut. And there is, there's an Asian guy, there's a black guy, there's a Middle Eastern guy.
There's a woman.
But they're all still the same.
No, you're right. I meant they're diverse. They're at least diverse in appearance, but you're right. They all kind of act the same. They're all just young adult, read the lines, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But I do agree with you that a lot of the, pardon me for interrupting, a lot of the more interesting people and more diverse in cast, not just in ethnic background, whatever, but in terms of personality and age and that sort of thing, all came from the supporting cast, a lot of which we just met during this movie. And what I did find interesting about this movie is I think they actually had better production values and probably a bigger budget than the first movie. At least that what appears to me. Since the first movie did well, I think they put more money in this movie, and some things looked nicer, I thought. Mm-hmm. And I thought they actually brought in some real grown-up talent to fill in a lot of the supporting roles, and that definitely helped the movie. I mean, it needed a lot of it. There's definitely a low bar set, but you know, to echo what you're saying is I think the best performances, some of the most interesting scenes were with the supporting players brought in for this second movie.
Right, and that was mostly toward the middle and end of the movie. Steve, I did some quick Googling while you were talking. Excuse me for not listening as closely as I should have, but you're right. The budget for this one is about twice as much as the first one, and that kind of makes sense. The first one, except for the very end of the movie, they were pretty much confined to one look,
the glade,
one set. Yeah, the glade. So, and this movie kind of had a lot of different locations, you could say, different production designs going on, which definitely added to the look of the movie, which I did think was improved. Unfortunately, the story was just not there for me. So, yeah, I think I'm with you guys. I think this is kind of a, if you want to make it through to the end of this to see what happens, this is a rent versus go buy a ticket.
Were there any bonus scenes after the credits? I just stick around now.
No, there were none. No. I have an app, Steve, and I check it usually before the movie, but sometimes when we're sitting there watching the credits, Brad will be like, turn to me, he'll be like, I'll pull out my phone and be like, is there anything after? And I'll be no.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you which app. The app I have that tells me if there's end credits is, which everyone needs to get, is called Run Pee.
Oh, I've seen that one. That's a different one. That one tells you what point in the movie if you have to pee, you should go pee.
Exactly. It vibrates so you can get up and go.
That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. I'm kind of old, and I could still make it through a 2-hour movie pretty much without having to pee right in the middle, as long as I go right before. I know that's TMI, but the app that I have, all it does is tells you if there's anything during or after the credits, and whether the consensus is if it's worth sticking around for.
And so, it's called
Anything After. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Alliteration is amazing. It's so good.
You just got a little bit chubby again.
I did. I'm a lot chubby. A couple places. Anyway. All right. So this one's kind of a pass in terms of going to see it at the movie theaters, but it sounds like we're all kind of agreed if it, is on cable or you want to rent it and check it out. If you're kind of following from the first movie, maybe worth your time. Do we want to briefly dive into spoilers, or do you feel like that's not necessary at this point?
Yeah, I want to go into spoilers. There's a lot more I want to talk about. Well, not a lot more, but there's some points I want to talk about.
All right. So spoilers are officially fair game then. If you value, your bridal innocence when it comes to the plot of this movie, you'll do well to skip ahead 15 minutes. But we are going to go ahead and spoil it. Steve, you brought something up earlier that I wanted to touch on about this movie sort of changing its genre multiple times throughout the movie. Like, we start off with, like, military mystery movie, and then it becomes zombie mall, zombie desert movie.
Yeah.
And then it becomes rebellion in the hills movie. I mean, was that jarring? Was it, like, kind of genre whiplash for you guys? It was a little bit for me.
It goes from Hunger Games to 28 Days to Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, to begin with, this movie, as it is, like I said, it's really and granted, I don't really know the books, but it is obviously trying to capitalize on young adult, popularity of young adult novels turned to movies. But this is really the second tier scraps of every other young adult movie. So So it begins as a hodgepodge of the cliches you expect from movies you've already seen. So why not be 3 different movies that are popular other places and try to stitch them together into one middle story of a 3-story epic?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, when we talk about young adult, I'm trying to figure out what makes a movie fit in that young adult box. Is it just because it's about young adults? Or does it cover young adult themes? Because this one really doesn't, I don't think, this one, not even as much as the first one, covers young adult themes. The first one was very interesting, at least at the beginning, when is Thomas the lead character, when he's popped up into the glade and he's trying to fit in, to the groups and stuff. This one was much less of that in terms of young adult. This was much more of a zombie adventure, and that's my next rant when I get into
But he's the chosen one. The constant theme of the young adult novel movies is, the most specialist teen who fights the system by proving you can be yourself, and anyway, so there's a little of that.
Standing up for what you think is right. And
oh my God, that speech at the fucking end of the movie, excuse my language.
It's funny because within the space of 3 minutes, people are like, fine, you want to fucking leave, go ahead.
It's suicide, kid.
You're crazy. And then he gives 4 sentences of a speech. He's like, yeah, we're in. And they're all behind him. I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's right.
What's your plan, kid?
We're going back to Wicked. We just got out of there. We're going back.
Yeah, go back.
I'll go back.
Yeah. Well, that's like Mad Max, basically. It was the same thing, right? They went all the way out there. They just to come back. I know. Spoiler for Mad Max.
In the Mad Max portion of the movie.
So, but seriously though, have we fucking finally had enough zombies, really? Because I rolled my eyes so hard when they showed them outside the compound there at the beginning, and I'm like, oh my God, it's zombies. Really? They couldn't even keep the bugs from the first movie? That would have at least been semi-interesting.
Yeah.
The zombie thing is got this whole Walking Dead. I don't know if that's. I guess it's in the books, but maybe. But I'm just really, really tired of the zombie thing. Really tired.
It had me confused because we get that cool scene early on, right, where they go into the room, they steal the card and get into the room, right, where they overhear and we see the prawns in the brine tubes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are these evil crazy bugs that are crawling the desert trying to kill people?
Right.
Apparently we don't know what they are. They're just window dressing, and we just get
nothing.
Yeah, we just get zombies with gurgling black ooze coming out of it. At least they run though. At least they're fast. They're not but even then, I like The Walking Dead, but I'm getting zombie fatigue, no doubt.
Yeah, I didn't know what those bugs. I guess we had that in the first movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had the kind of these giant bug things in the first movie, and I assume that I'm just assuming now after the fact that that's what they were growing in those big tubes. I don't know.
Now, am I correct in assuming were those essentially some primordial version of the things that were chasing them in the maze?
That's the only thing I can assume. Because they didn't show anything in this movie
and are those the things that caused the plague?
Mm.
And again, back to my central complaint. Shit don't make sense. Starting with, why have the fucking maze in the first place? And I say that because the only thing that this movie sort of explains is that they're basically fighting a sickness, a virus, for which the cure is in the blood cell, or in the blood, or in the bodies of just young people, and only some of them. If you know that, what was the point of the maze? Why not just strap them into a gurney and start drawing blood? Why do you have to put them into a maze where they're dying off one at a time?
Right. Or just
before you take them out and suck their blood.
Or just put them in a safe area where they can grow and blah 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 and be harvested. You know what I mean?
Or
that
maybe
would be kind of cool.
Or maybe something about getting out of the maze, activates the certain blood cells. You know what I mean? The adrenaline somehow, causes a reaction, or I'm sure you could come up with a sciencey explanation. But again, these movies don't really feel the need to explain those things.
Right, because we're 4 hours in and they haven't explained anything yet. So why? Right. What are they going to do? Dump it all on us in the end? Like, oh, that's what that was. Amazing.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen.
It doesn't explain that. It doesn't explain why, if you can create the vaccine from their blood or their essence, whatever, you have to trap them and imprison them, and why they couldn't just be a blood bank where they could just draw blood and say, all right, come back tomorrow, we'll get a little bit more.
Right.
We'll give you a lollipop if you come back and give us some more.
And not only that, what are they making the serum for? Who are they making the serum for? Just for the few people that run that compound? I mean, do they really need that many people to just keep, a staff alive, indefinitely? There's just it doesn't seem to be any big plan. Be nice if it was laid out.
And again, back to the maze, this is driving me nuts. In a dystopian future with so few resources, what did it cost? What did it take? How long did it take to build these city-sized mazes simply for the purpose of fooling and tricking young children?
Right.
And apparently there are multiples of them all around the planet. That seems to get a lot of expense and time to go just to draw blood from people.
Yeah, it's just out there. It's funny because it almost makes me want to sample the books and see if the books have done a better job at creating this world and explaining the story a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The only thing that I can assume is we actually saw more of the world this time around. Apparently, there are Burning Man disco parties out in these cities, right?
Yeah.
And affluent people are there doing drugs and dancing on poles and, doing crazy stuff. So the only thing I can assume is that the government or whatever is harvesting this blood to make the drug to either vaccinate or protect people against the plague somehow. And maybe they're selling it, maybe they're getting a lot of money for it, who knows. Maybe they're using it as a means of keeping the populace in check so they stay in control. I don't know. But at least in the Hunger Games, you've got an adequate sense of who the players are and what's involved. You know what I mean? President Snow is the head of the bad guys, and that the government is trying to keep the districts held under their thumb, and they're barely hanging on to control. Whereas the rebellion, blah 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 blah. It makes sense, but in this situation, it's kind of why? Wicked is good, okay, but why is there even a Wicked? What is the whole fucking point of any of it? I don't know. I can't answer that question yet. That frustrates me.
I'll tell you honestly, by the end of the movie, I was rooting for Wicked. I heard someone say today, actually in a different podcast, that when you're a fan of horror movies, there's a certain point where you're kind of rooting for the killer to just decapitate everybody. That's part of the fun of the movie. True or not, and maybe just because I'm an old, grumpy old man, there's a point where I'm like, screw it. They find a cure, kill them. I don't know, take a couple of them.
Yeah.
If you can save every other person on the planet by finding this cure, and sacrificing a couple teenagers, maybe that's worth it. If you can save the entire planet, maybe that's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted this movie to end with all the kids dead, and Giancarlo Esposito and Lily Taylor to be the team up at the end, and they're like, the kids are dead. It's up to us to solve it now, and they have to face off against Littlefinger and Patricia Clarkson, and just get rid of all the fucking kids, keep the interesting adults. I think it'd be great. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, we've got a live comment, guys.
Go for it.
Will from Austin, Texas.
Well,
howdy, guys. I'm spying on you for the rest of the episode. Hey, Will, how does it feel to be on the other side of the camera for once?
Hey, I met that guy.
He's probably out of his mind.
Oh man, I can't even. I mean, I know how much.
Speaking of zombies, he's a movie zombie right now.
Will, you're on 240.
The other night had Will's expert input on zombie movies and whether or not horror movie fans root for the killer.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
I definitely was rooting for the killer in a movie we saw earlier this year called Unfriended.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my gosh. You know the movie that we're reviewing this week is bad when you're more interested in talking about another bad movie you saw earlier in the year than this movie.
That's right.
Oh, goodness. And for the record, Will says it feels great to be on the other side of the camera. So.
Okay. All right. Ask him that. Will, how many zombie movies have you seen in the 22 or 23 movies you've seen so far?
Oh, good question.
So we'll see what he says to that.
He does say big thanks to Steve for filling in for him this week. So
Yay.
There you go. All right. Well, guys, do we have anything else to talk about this movie? Is there any other hanging?
No, let's hang it up till next year.
No, hang on. Actually, I got one more Will comment. I do want to publicly thank Will for taking time out of his weekend last weekend as my boyfriend and I were in Austin, Texas for the Cal Texas game. Will had a lot of stuff going on, but he managed to swing by and join us for a drink on Sunday before he left town, and that was very cool. Thank you, Will.
Will is amazing.
Yeah, I was. I've been jealous of what's going on there in Austin, and especially when you showed up last weekend. I know we had our own game to attend, but I'm glad you got to hang out with Will, and Will's such a great guy. I have no question that he enjoyed making time to see you. So.
And I got to do Sunday services in Will's chapel, the Alamo Draft House. So I got to,
there you go.
To feel his presence even if he wasn't there.
Nice. All right. Well, guys, let's move on to some plugs. Steve, in addition to anything you might want our listeners to check out, like movie-wise, can you also tell us where to find the Sac Movie Bears?
Absolutely. The easiest place to find us is just on Facebook at Sacramento Movie Bears. And we're here, local in Sacramento, California. Do our movies usually every Tuesday night. We've been on a little bit of a break, but we'll be back next week with, I think, The Martian.
Awesome.
Perhaps on IMAX. Okay, looks a little interesting. So come check us out. Other plugs I've got, I was going to plug a couple of movies. Actually, one I've seen, but actually a couple of movies I have not seen, but I want to kind of point people to them. Because everyone's current favorite whipping boy on the internet is the new Stonewall movie. Everyone's got a beef with that movie.
I know. It's the Facebook outrage whipping boy of the month.
It's almost as bad as the annual chat room debate on what's really a bear. Who's a bear? Who's not a bear? That circles around about once a year.
I'm not a bear. I hate bears. I don't want to be a bear.
Or the Apple Android argument. Don't forget that one.
Exactly. So everyone's beating up on Stonewall. Or my favorite review of it, the title was they just called it Swishtar after the movie Ishtar.
Swishtar! Wow. I love that.
And the director of the movie is reported as saying that he decided to make the movie once he heard the story of Stonewall and thought someone should really make a movie about this. Well, there's multiple movies about this, and I was going to point you to a couple of them. One is a 2010 documentary called Stonewall Uprising, which I'm looking forward to seeing. But my point is, as bad as the Stonewall 2015 reviews are, the Stonewall Uprising documentary from 2010 is fairly well reviewed, and you might learn something if you're interested in the subject matter. Also, in 1995, there was an actual theatrical release movie called Stonewall, which also is reasonably well reviewed, starring one of my favorite TV crushes, Guillermo Diaz, who you might know as the IT hack / assassin from the TV show Scandal. Super hot cubby bear, sometimes openly gay actor, occasionally known to show up at Lazy Bear. Guillermo Diaz stars in this 1995 movie Stonewall. Looks a little different 20 years ago, and he's in drag for most of the movie, but it is definitely interesting. So if you're interested in the history of Stonewall and you want to catch either a documentary or a better movie about it, you might try the documentary Stonewall Uprising or the 1995 movie Stonewall by the same name. My other plug, I did want to, and this I'm going to sort of call back to a previous show. Still in theaters, I am still highly recommending Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
Which really is sort of towards the top of my list as one of the best movies last year, and I sat here watching you guys review the movie and shouting at my screen, but I wanted to jump in there so much.
Now's your chance, man.
Well, I appreciated how, and I also felt you guys struggling to be very thoughtful about your review of the movie, and I almost wanted to jump in and take some of the pressure off you a little bit. Because I had a few comments about it, including Jim, your observation about the trailers before the movie. How they are so specifically marketed, and then you suddenly see every black movie ever made or whatever next Tyler Perry movie's coming out because they figure that's the audience that's there with that movie. I would also, suggest that people notice that they go to a movie like this. You also see trailers for horror movies. For some reason, the Hollywood marketing geniuses decide that black moviegoers want to see other black movies and horror movies.
Wow.
So you'll see those too. But the movie itself, I honestly, I'm not a huge NWA fan. I couldn't tell you a whole lot about them. I did not even know that the movie Straight Outta Boys in the Hood was an album before it was a movie. But I did live in Los Angeles in the mid-'90s. I was there during the Rodney King riots, and actually I worked at Tower Video, watching a lot of movies and renting videos and buying Laserdiscs. A couple of Laserdiscs I bought at that time were the movie Do the Right Thing and Boys in the Hood, which to me were not just good or bad movies, because they're movies that I enjoyed, but also made me furious in many ways. But I thought of them as sort of time capsules, kind of moments in time of what life was like for a group of people in a certain place at a certain time. And that is the way that I viewed the movie Straight Outta Compton. It was a time and a place. It was as far as the movie about a band, if you will, it was, fairly by the book, behind the scenes, music documentary. But I think it really captured fairly well how young black men thought of themselves in the 90s, particularly around in L.A. Compton, and how they thought the world viewed them in particular, and sort of the way they saw the world at that place at that time. But at the same time, you could tell this is a movie produced by middle-aged men looking back on their youth and having sort of that broad perspective on it. So as a music documentary itself, I thought just okay, but as a movie, and particularly as a time capsule of a time and place, I thought really good. And even if you don't care for the music or the band, I think it's worth seeing it as a movie with some outstanding performances
definitely.
by all three leads, including Ice-T's son, or Ice Cube's son.
Yeah.
So I want to replug that movie.
I really dug the guy who played Easy.
Yeah.
I really dug his performance. Couple of things about that movie. I'm not a big fan of rap, but after that movie, I was thumping NWA in my car on the way to and from work for about 2 weeks, man, and I was digging it. I'm like, wow, this shit is hardcore. Like,
you're riding down the road in your 6-4.
They're going off on everything, and everything's in there. It, like they say, it's there's misogynist lyrics, there's homophobic lyrics, there's very violent lyrics. But if you put it all together, it's really it's kind of like, it's got an energy to it that, it's hard to describe. And I don't want to dismiss any of that other stuff, which I think is not good, not cool. But it's got this raw energy to it that goes well with the music, and I really like that. And I have heard, since we reviewed that movie, I've listened to read about other people who've reviewed it, and who knew maybe more about NWA when they were in their heyday. And one of the things we got is how it was watered down, how it was filtered, filtered through Ice Cube and the producing team to kind of weed out maybe some of the more negative stuff that they perpetrated, and a little bit maybe biased. But I don't know. I don't know. And that it's been a criticism, not for me because I don't know. But it was interesting to hear about that.
Well, if Suge Knight ever makes his movie, it's interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, that would be great.
And just talk about the music itself. And again, I'll admit, I don't know that much about it, and I don't think you have to like this movie. But I will compare it in this. I will compare it in this small way to the Amy Winehouse movie. The Amy Winehouse movie, and again, I knew one song by Amy Winehouse, but I really enjoyed that movie. And it went through a lot of her music, and it did a very good job of putting the music side by side with events in her life to highlight the lyrics and how she made the songs and what it meant to her at that point in her life. And like you, Jim, I want to go back down and listen to the NWA albums because this movie did a fairly good job of, highlighting where the music came from, where the songs came from, where the lyrics came from at different points in their career, and what the significance of that was. And I found that interesting.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Brad, we went way off on a tangent on that. But
hey,
it's what I love to do. I love to talk about movies.
It's okay. I mean, we didn't have a ton to talk about, the movie we were reviewing this week, so we can use the time to talk about a good film. I mean, I thought Straight Outta Compton. I mean, we definitely did a whole show on it not too long ago, but definitely a good film, and I'm glad to hear that it's still kind of around and accessible. Steve, I love that you plugged it again. I think it's absolutely worth checking out. I do find some of the revisionist history to be a little irritating. I've learned a lot more about the band, and particularly in regards to Dr. Dre since seeing that movie, and a lot of the violence against women and stuff that was going on there that is nowhere in the movie whatsoever. Just kind of like, yeah, well, the winners get to write the history books, I guess, right? But even though all the details may not necessarily be there, I still think it's a great film. And I haven't bought like an NWA album on iTunes. Like I've never bought. Well, that's not true. I bought a rap album exactly once before, and that was Coolio's Gangster's Paradise, whatever album that song was on. Because I was like, oh my God, Dangerous Minds, Michelle.
Sure, it wasn't the Weird Al Yankovic version.
No, I bought that album too.
Amish Paradise.
No. So I went out and bought this album, or one of them, their first albums, and I actually didn't listen to it that much. But it was interesting. I mean, I wasn't thumping down the street like Jim with my windows down and that stuff. But
my trunk was rattling.
But it is interesting. Like if you actually go back and listen to the lyrics beyond just what's featured in the movie. I mean, I remember my brother listening to those songs, and it's so weird for me to like listen to them now as opposed to like when I was a kid, like huddled in the corner, like scared of this like crazy rap music that he's like punching himself in the mirror to, like trying to be badass, like it was just a weird time for me. Anyway, whatever. But yeah, great call out there, great film. I think people should definitely go check it out. So, welcome to our Straight Outta Maze Runner review. Because it's so bad, we jumped straight out of Maze Runner into Compton. So
I got all built up stuff because I wasn't on.
What's that?
I have all this built up stuff from shows I wasn't on. I still need to admonish. I still need to admonish Will Lindus for not seeing Man from U.N.C.L.E. Missing out.
Right.
I agree. Right. I think that was kind of a pleasant surprise for me. It didn't knock me out, but I was very much entertained by that movie. Surprisingly so. I was kind of passing I was kind of already past it when we were going to see it. I'm like, okay, I'll go to see this. But
no.
Yeah, it did the job for me. I kind of liked it. And I used to actually watch when I was a little kid. Man from U.N.C.L.E. was still on TV.
Yeah.
I would watch that. I would watch that shit. So.
And the girl from Uncle was the thing.
Well, I never watched The Girl from Uncle because that was for girls. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now who's listening to misogyny?
I know.
Now we know why. Anyway, Jim, what's your plug this week?
My plug is actually a TV show, a TV series about movies and about making movies called The Chair. I don't know if any of you, Steve, I don't know if you've seen it. Brad, I know you've seen a little bit of it. I hope you get to see the rest of it. Pretty fascinating documentary for me. So what this is it's a reality show. It's a 10-parter, 10-hour reality show done on Starz, and it's on Starz on Demand. It's actually, I watched it on iTunes. You could buy the whole series for $10 right now, and it's produced or created by this guy Chris Moore, who's a movie producer. He's produced a lot of movies. He started the whole Project Greenlight thing back when it first started. This is a doc series that chronicles the making of 2 movies simultaneously at the same time by 2 different directors, but they start with the same script. And it's an experiment to see how, this guy Chris Moore and his staff always had this idea about what would it be like if, would a different director make the same script differently? And so they get to do that, and they pick 2 up-and-coming, I'll call them directors, even though they're new to the game. These are brand new directors. They give them the script. They set them up with a budget, just somewhere around between $700,000 and $1 million, somewhere in there. And they have to cast it. They have to, do any script rewrites. They have to, put their staff together. And it's really a fascinating documentary about not just how movies are made, but how projects are actually run. If you're a project manager in any business, I think you could find something interesting out of here. How to handle people, how to work with teams and so forth. But I was really amazed by the show. It's called The Chair, and it's right now. I know it's available on iTunes, or if you have Starz or Starz on Demand, you can get it there too as well. And
don't forget to mention that it also kind of features Zachary Quinto and his eyebrows.
That's right. Zachary Quinto is one of the executive producers for the whole project. And there was actually, I don't know if you've read about it, but there was actually a big controversy between him and one of these young directors during the making of the movies. Created quite a bit of drama. One of the directors is a young guy from Hollywood who is one of these YouTube stars who has like 5 million followers or something on YouTube, and he makes these YouTube videos, and he wanted to make a movie, so he did, and so that in itself was pretty interesting to see how somebody could try to make the transition between a YouTube star and an actual motion picture director. So, but I'd recommend it. I'd recommend that series for those of you, especially those of you who like Project Greenlight, which has also started up. Now, this is very much in that vein, but just a little bit different.
Oh my gosh, Jim! I just realized we forgot to watch Project Greenlight last night.
Right, so we have that in the can, waiting for us to watch sometime.
I had that in mind when we were talking. That's why I was wondering if you. That sounded like Project Greenlight what you were describing.
And it's very much so. I mean, it's got a connection to Project Greenlight. It's just a different approach. They're actually, instead of Project Greenlight documents how they make a movie. This is how they make 2 movies and a documentary series all at the same time.
Nice. Nice. Well, let's see. For me this week, I just want to give a quick shout-out once again to Michael Denniston and the guys over at War Machine vs. Warhorse. Had the pleasure of guesting on their show recently, and that episode actually just came out a few days ago. I get to talk about Frozen, the 2010 Sean Ashmore movie, not the animated musical film, versus Liam Neeson in The Grey. And it's kind of funny because I came to the show prepared to talk about Frozen, Let It Go, and it was actually a horror movie
the
about
wrong movie.
wolves and getting stuck on a ski lift. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's a different movie, isn't it? Anyway, had a blast with Michael and Emily, and it's a great episode. So, War Machine versus Warhorse, it's available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio as well for our non-iTunes people. They definitely have a cool format. They review a current film and then take two older films and kind of pit them against each other. So the episode you're looking for is the Everest episode, and I'm not actually on for the Everest discussion, but hang around for Frozen versus the Gray. And again, to those of you who have found us through War Machine versus Warhorse, welcome, welcome. We're very glad to have you guys on board. Well, guys, I think that wraps us for this week. Final thing from me, Steve, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. As usual, it's a complete and total blast having you on. And if there's ever a film you want to discuss that's not a Maze Runner movie, let us know. We would love to have you.
Well, certainly if there's another Straight Outta Compton, you'll have to have me on in the Larry Wilmore role as senior black correspondent. But no, any time, it's always a blast. I would love to do it whenever you need me.
Awesome. So I like to come up with titles. So it's Straight Back to Compton. This is the next movie.
Oh, gosh. Compton has apparently changed quite a bit since then, by the way. I was watching...
Has it?
I was watching this...
Steve would know.
I was...
Compton, the gentrification.
I was watching this prank video today of this guy in like this big like raptor costume, like pranking people on the streets of Compton. And Compton, at least the areas in the video, looked a little more modern.
I love those videos. I don't know why.
Oh, it was so funny.
I am a sick fuck because those, of all the videos that like crack me up on the internet, those are the ones where people like are scared by like a snowman standing on the corner that jumps out at them when they walk by. I don't know why. I'm weird.
It's delicious. Anyway. Mm-hmm. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. I'm assuming Martian next week. Yes. I think. Probably.
Go Bears. Go Bears.
Bear down. Arizona.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.